Hello and welcome to the very beautiful but very rainy city of Wuhan, where we have come to talk about this, the all-new MG4. Have you ever thought about exporting a Chinese car to your country? Maybe a Xiaomi YU7, a Yangwang U8, a Li Auto L7 family SUV, or even a Xiaomi SU7 Ultra? Well, if that's what you're thinking about doing, we can help. Reach out to us at sales@wheelsboy.cn to learn about our export services. Welcome to Wheelsboy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. You'll have to excuse me if the footage for this video isn't quite up to our normal standards. You see, it's pouring rain here in Wuhan, and has been ever since we started filming. I am not willing to risk thousands of dollars of camera equipment by taking it out in the rain, and I'm way too much of a diva to get out from under this awning, so it is what it is. So, what about them changes? For starters, the price, which was already roughly half of what people paid in other markets, has been nearly cut in half again. Instead of starting at around, or a little under, 16,000 euros, it now starts at a little under 9,000 euros. That's one change I'm pretty confident is not going to make it to foreign markets. For the record, it was physically painful for me to depart from my standard of only talking in USD, but I figured that euros were a more relevant metric for this car. Don't get used to it. A lot of changes needed to take place in order for them to drop the price that much, and the most important ones arguably happened where you can't see them. But first, let's talk about what you can see. On the exterior, there's been a major redesign, a move away from the edgy, sporty, aggressive look of the last MG4 and towards something that's softer, more approachable. On the rear, we also have redesigned taillights, which resemble those of the MG Cyberster. Normally, I'm not a big fan of standing in the rain, but my videographer insists that it's easier to dry me out than it is thousands of dollars in camera equipment. So, this car, in addition to having a redesign, has also seen an increase in size of about 10 centimeters. Around 5 centimeters of that has gone to the wheelbase. I've got big news, because registration for Wheelsboy's Guangzhou EV Tour has begun. The event will take place from November 20th to 26th and include time at the Guangzhou International Auto Show, as well as a trip to the beautiful city of Shenzhen. If you want to learn more, reach out right now to tour@wheelsboy.cn. We'll see you in Guangzhou. The interior has also been completely revamped with a whole new look that I think looks a little bit more fashion-forward compared to the previous generation. Here on the center console, you've also got a whole new arrangement. Instead of the shift knob up here on the kind of floating island, you have a column-mounted shift lever. That makes way for this all-new one-piece center console design with phone storage up front, cup holders in the middle, and a wireless charging pad right here. Down below this is more storage. In the previous generation car, we had a 10.25-inch screen with a large set of buttons underneath. That's been redesigned. Those buttons have been simplified down to these smaller buttons right down here. The screens, however, have been upgraded. You can still get the 10.25-inch screen if you get that super cheap sub 9,000 euro version of the car, but if you upgrade from there, you get this 12.8-inch 1080p screen. If you splurge on the nearly 13,000 euro top spec car, then you can get a 15.6-inch 2.5K screen. MG has recently begun cooperating with Chinese phone maker Oppo, the result of which is an impressive level of integration between the MG4 center screen and Oppo phones. That includes the best phone mirroring function I've ever seen on a car. It can mirror your exact phone screen onto the infotainment screen and use it to navigate phone apps and watch videos. This works best with Oppo phones, but the mirroring ability is also available for other phone brands, including iPhone, albeit with more limited functionality. While the previous generation MG4 had available seat heating, this one has available seat heating and ventilation. But if you're gonna cut price this much, you obviously can't upgrade everything. Some stuff's either gonna have to stay the same or get downgraded. In terms of things that have been kept the same, This 7-inch digital instrument cluster and this steering wheel appear to be exact transplants from the original MG4, the previous generation MG4. In terms of downgrades, I would say the most important ones, well, we'll get to them when it comes to the driving experience of this car, but on the interior, I would point to material qualities. The last generation MG4 wasn't exactly a luxury car, but this one, well, let's just say there's a lot more hard plastic than there is soft touch material. Upgrades to the second row include, let's see. Well, there's the extra 5 centimeters of wheelbase, so, you know, nice leg room. Maybe that much bigger than the last car. Headroom, pretty good. About the same as the last car, but I gotta say, not bad considering the size of this car. It's actually quite comfortable. And yeah, you've still got one USB charging port right down there. So far, all of the changes that we've discussed, I'm talking about the exterior and interior, are ones that I would expect to see when this car debuts in other markets this updated generation. However, the changes I'm about to discuss with you, well, I'm not so sure. I'm talking about the ones that you can't see, the ones underneath. For starters, when this car debuted, whether it was in China or in other markets, it had a McPherson strut front suspension and a 5-link independent rear. However, with this latest 2026 model, they've gotten rid of that 5-link independent rear suspension and they've switched over to a simpler, more compact, and more affordable torsion beam. But wait, there's more, because an arguably even more fundamental change has taken place. When this car debuted, it was rear motor and dual motor all-wheel drive. However, now it is only front motor, front wheel drive. There are no rear motor or all-wheel drive variants available. That front motor makes 120 kilowatts, which is actually 5 kilowatts less than the original rear motor car, but it has the same 250 newton meters of torque. The official 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time of 7.2 seconds is, frankly, plenty fast and plenty peppy for a city runabout. Even here on the highway, I've had no trouble passing other cars. However, it's obviously not going to provide the same thrills as a dual motor powertrain with a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time of 3.8 seconds. Getting rid of the all-wheel drive option made perfect sense if they were going to attack this lower price segment. It's also part of a larger trend in which an increasing number of Chinese brands are getting rid of dual motor performance variants in order to focus on more affordable, more efficient models that seem to appeal to a greater number of customers. That power level was a unique proposition in this price segment, even here in China, but it didn't seem to appeal to very many buyers. Again, at least here in the Chinese market. These changes are obviously going to affect the way this car rides and handles. When it comes to the ride, it's no longer quite as sophisticated as the previous generation car. It's not quite as stable at high speeds, and it's not quite as stable when you're going over bumps, especially when you're going over bumps in corners. However, I will say it doesn't feel really uncomfortable, especially considering how downright cheap it is, and it feels slightly more substantial than Chinese competitors like the Geely Galaxy Xingyuan. As for the handling, it's no longer as sporty or confidence-inspiring as the previous generation, but that doesn't mean that it's not nimble at all. It's still quite flickable. It's just that, as a front-wheel drive car, it has a greater tendency to plow or understeer when you really push it into a corner because those front wheels are doing double duty. They're in charge of steering and putting the power down. So some sacrifices have been made in terms of this car's sporty driving dynamics in order to achieve that price point, but they also come with some benefits in terms of practicality. For starters, rear cargo space is way up to 471 liters. That's due almost entirely to the fact that the underfloor storage is way bigger than the previous generation car, because they got rid of that rear motor and they switched to a more compact rear suspension setup. This car, by switching to front-wheel drive, also doesn't sacrifice anything in terms of frunk storage because, well, it never really had a frunk to begin with. Some of you may be watching this video and thinking, boy, I hope they offer that version of the car in my market because I care way more about practicality and efficiency than I do sporty driving dynamics when I'm buying a cheap electric car. However, some of you may be watching and thinking, boy, I hope they don't do that to the car in my market. Well, I've got bad news for the first group and good news for the latter group, because I really don't think that MG is going to sell this exact car in foreign markets. I highly doubt they are going to arguably decontent the car that's sold in markets like Europe or the UK or Australia or other markets, because honestly, that doesn't match with their sales strategy in those markets. You see, this car here in the Chinese market, frankly, has never sold very well. And I think one reason for that, the major reason, is the fact that it has many more, much stronger competitors than it does in places like Europe. And those competitors have been undercutting it in terms of price almost from the beginning. So they really needed to make huge changes to the way they were selling this car in China. In Europe, however, the situation was very different. This car was outselling a vast majority, if not all of its competition, putting aside any issues with tariffs and all of that. So it doesn't make sense for them to mess with what appears to be a winning formula. There's never been one-to-one overlap when it came to the battery specs on the Chinese market MG4 and the global market MG4, but I will tell you about the new batteries that are available on this 2026 model here in China, because there's some interesting stuff going on that I do hope makes its way to the global version. For starters, we've got two new LFP or lithium iron phosphate battery packs. The standard range car has a 43 kilowatt hour pack and a claimed range of 437 kilometers on China's CLTC cycle. But wait, there's more, because MG claims that they are also going to offer a semi-solid state battery for the MG4. No specific range has been announced, but prices are supposed to be released in September, with deliveries to begin before the end of the year. The larger, let's call it the long-range version, is a 54 kilowatt hours with a claimed range of 530 kilometers. Again, note that those are the ranges on China's CLTC standard, which tends to be a little bit more generous because it includes more city driving than other cycles like WLTP or EPA. However, I need to add an asterisk here because I will believe it when I see it. Last year, I did a static review of the IM-L6. IM is another brand from SAIC, who are the owners of MG, and they claimed at the time that they were going to have a semi-solid state battery available, except I can find no evidence to suggest that they ever actually sold any semi-solid state battery equipped L6s, at least so far, and again, it's been over a year. So let's take all of this with a grain of salt. All right, that's going to do it for today's review. Be sure to let me know in the comments section below which camp you fall into. Would you prefer the more sporty rear-wheel drive MG4 or this front-wheel drive, more practical, slightly more efficient version with the bigger boot? Either way, I want to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. As always, be sure to check us out on social media, links in the description below, and remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.